Good evening, and welcome to Sleepy Night Channel. Tonight, we drift into rainforests, with the soft filtered light through the leaves and the slow breathing of the ancient trees. For now, there is nothing you need to do, just get comfortable and listen. Soft bell chimes and gentle ambience stay with us throughout, quiet and steady. If you'd like more calm bedtime episodes, you can like the video or leave a short comment below. It helps this channel reach others who need something quiet at night. Now, let's begin. The journey begins at the quiet edge of the open plains, where the bright and harsh sun slowly gives way to a massive green wall of leaves and heavy branches. We leave the dry wind behind and step into a completely different world where everything feels calmer, cooler, and deeply protected from the sky above. As soon as we enter the deep shade of the great forest, the atmosphere immediately shifts into a soothing, sheltered space that has remained almost unchanged for millions of years. It is a place where time seems to slow down, carried by the steady rhythm of falling water drops and slowly growing roots in the dark earth. The rainforest is one of the oldest and most complex natural systems on our planet, a dense collection of life that works together in a state of perfect balance. It is not just a random group of trees, but a vast, living fabric that breathes and moves with an invisible and comforting slowness. Scientists noticed this when they measured the massive amount of water vapor that is released by the leaves every single day, acting as if the forest itself has a calm and constant outward breath. It is another way of seeing the same idea of a closed loop, where nothing is ever lost and everything is quietly passed along to the next living thing. Take a slow breath and let your jaw unclench as we walk further under the lush green roof that hides the open sky from view. There is nothing you need to solve right now, so just let your thoughts drift with the slow and heavy current of the damp, warm forest air. Another quiet detail is the way the sunlight is softened and broken apart by millions of individual leaves, allowing only a gentle emerald glow to reach the forest floor. This heavily filtered light creates a feeling of absolute safety, a protective blanket that keeps the bright, busy world outside and invites us to simply rest in the shadows. As we drift a little deeper into the woods, we begin to understand the true and massive scale of this incredible green architecture. The trees rise up like enormous pillars, with wooden trunks so wide and solid that they look like the ancient columns of a forgotten, peaceful temple. Evidence suggests that some of these giant trees have been standing in the exact same spot for many hundreds of years, silently watching the endless cycle of day and night pass by. We feel the reliability of this order, a biological framework that is so massive and heavy it can absorb and calm any sudden gust of wind. The air inside the forest feels thick and rich, heavily saturated with pure water and the comforting, earthy smell of damp soil and green plants. This high humidity is a vital part of the system, a constant and gentle hug that prevents the delicate leaves and flowers from ever drying out in the heat of the day. In practice, this thick air acts like a giant, soft sponge that holds onto the moisture and slowly gives it back to the environment at a very calm and measured pace. It is a perfect mechanical process that happens entirely automatically, without any rush or urgency, keeping the whole ecosystem in a state of deep and lasting peace. Let the day fade a little more as you listen to the rare, slow fall of a single water drop sliding off a large leaf and landing gently on the forest floor. This rhythmic tapping is one of the very few sounds that breaks the deep, comforting silence of the lowest layer of the ancient woods. One clue is that these heavy drops are sometimes traveling for hours, sliding from branch to branch, before they finally reach the earth to feed the waiting roots below. It reminds us of the endless patience of the natural world, where every single movement has a clear purpose and every delay is just a quiet preparation for the next step. If we return to that simple picture, we see a world that thrives on a slow, steady pace, rather than the quick actions we are used to in the modern human world. The plants do not loudly compete for space, but instead grow with a very slow precision, waiting patiently for the right moment to turn their leaves toward the little light they have. Scientists think that this extreme patience is the key to their long survival, a strategy of calm waiting rather than wasting their precious energy all at once. And this connects back to the idea of a soothing, predictable cycle that invites us to let go of our own rush and simply surrender to the stillness of the green room. The thick canopy of leaves high above us forms a continuous and solid ceiling, a complex structure that perfectly regulates the temperature of everything sitting below it. Even when the sun is at its absolute hottest, the air on the forest floor remains cool, stable, and entirely protected from the extremes of the changing weather outside. In practice, this green roof acts as a giant, natural blanket that holds onto the warmth during the cool nights and provides deep shade during the long, bright days. We can tell because the temperature inside the deep forest remains remarkably constant all year round, offering a sense of absolute security and predictability to everything that rests there. There is nothing you need to solve right now, because the ancient trees are carrying all the heavy weight, and they found the perfect balance for this environment a very long time ago. As we rest here in our thoughts, we are surrounded by millions of soft green surfaces that naturally absorb sound and gently quiet the world around us. Another quiet detail is how even the hardest rainstorm hitting the top of the canopy is transformed into a soft, even murmur by the time the sound finally reaches the ground. The forest takes the loud chaos of the storm and turns it into a calming, rhythmic song that helps us sink even deeper into a state of total relaxation. The rainforest acts as the gentle heart and lungs of our planet, an invisible connection that cleans the air and influences the flow of water all across the globe. Every single time these millions of trees take a breath, they help to stabilize the climate and keep the air that we breathe far away fresh and clean. Evidence suggests that this massive system of evaporation actually forms real, physical clouds that travel across the continents to bring fresh rain to distant, dry lands. It is a tangible, real-world connection that shows how the slow, peaceful processes of the deep woods have a direct and healing impact on the entire Earth. As we walk further along the hidden paths, we notice how soft the earth is beneath our feet, covered in a thick layer of fallen leaves and velvet moss. This natural layer forms a soft cushion that quiets every single step, allowing us to glide soundlessly through the shadows without ever disturbing the peace of the woods. One reason for this is that the forest floor is constantly recycling its old material, gently breaking down the fallen leaves to create new, rich soil for the future. This is a silent, endless process of restoration that perfectly matches our own body's need to heal and recharge in the dark hours of the night. Now imagine the base of one of these giant trees stretching out into wide, wooden roots that snake across the forest floor like sleeping, gentle giants. These massive support roots not only anchor the heavy tree into the soft earth, but they also provide small, sheltered corners where other delicate plants can safely rest and grow. We feel the safety of this solid structure, a reliable and heavy foundation that leads us away from the waking world and deeper into the calming arms of nature. Everything in the rainforest has its specific place, and everything works together flawlessly in a quiet, unbroken harmony that has lasted since the beginning of time. Take another slow breath and feel the heavy, comforting warmth of the forest air wrap around your shoulders like a soft and familiar blanket. You are safe and protected, just like the small, delicate ferns that rest quietly in the cool shade of the towering, ancient wooden giants. The soft green light begins to slowly dim even further, signaling that we are preparing to explore the deeper, more hidden layers of this old and beautiful architecture. We are ready now to continue our gentle descent into this peaceful forest, entirely wrapped in the steady and calm presence of the oldest living things on Earth. Standing quietly next to the damp bark of an old tree, we can see small, brightly colored butterflies drifting silently through the remaining beams of light. Their slow, flowing movements seem to almost rest on the heavy air, a dance without any rush that perfectly reflects the absolute calm of this sheltered place. Scientists noticed that many animals living in the lowest layers of the forest lead remarkably quiet lives, preferring slow and thoughtful steps instead of quick or sudden motions. This behavior is a perfect adaptation to the dense environment, where saving precious energy and maintaining a low profile are the true keys to a long and peaceful survival. And this connects back to the idea of a world where stress and urgency simply do not exist, replaced instead by a steady, unbroken natural flow of life. Thick vines hang down from the high branches like heavy ropes, creating safe, vertical paths that gently connect the lush canopy to the dark forest floor. In practice, these vines work like quiet, invisible highways for the woods, allowing water and nutrients to travel slowly and efficiently throughout the entire ecosystem without any effort. It is a beautiful, silent network that unites every single plant and tree, making the rainforest literally function as one massive, peacefully breathing organism. Let your jaw unclench and feel how the solid earth beneath you provides the perfect support, very much like the deep, silent roots that hold the immense trees perfectly upright. There is truly no need to hurry here, because time in this place is not measured in hours or minutes, but in the slow turning of the planet and the gentle falling of the leaves. One clue is the way some lush mosses take decades to grow just a few inches, serving as a beautiful testament to the unimaginable patience of the natural world. We can safely rest in the knowledge that this slow system is massive and solid, built perfectly to protect our peace during the quiet hours of the approaching night. The soft light of the late afternoon has now almost turned into a deep, dark emerald green, causing the sharp edges of the leaves to slowly fade into soft, comforting shadows in the distance. The gentle introduction to this dense, green world is complete, and our bodies have already fully adapted to the calming rhythm and the deep, clean, and heavy moisture of the air. We are safely tied to the slow heartbeat of the earth, peacefully floating on the reliable cycle of water, muted light, and an endlessly patient, silent growth. Our minds are clear and quiet, completely ready to sink even deeper in the next stage and discover the true, majestic architecture of this towering, peaceful world. As we drift a little deeper into the green shadows, we can begin to look closer at how this massive living structure is actually built. From the ground all the way up to the sky, the forest is divided into different layers, much like the floors of a tall and quiet building. One clue is that each of these layers has its own specific climate, with different levels of light, wind, and moisture. At the very top, reaching far above the rest of the forest, are the emergent trees. These are the true giants of the woods, pushing their heavy branches past the thick green roof to stand alone in the bright, open sunlight. They are the only trees that feel the full force of the wind and the direct heat of the sun, acting as the silent guardians of the world below. Scientists noticed that these towering trees have very thick and waxy leaves, a physical feature designed to protect them from drying out in the harsh upper air. Because they are so high up, they cannot rely on the damp, heavy air of the forest floor to keep them safe. In practice, they are forced to hold on to their own moisture, adapting perfectly to the bright and windy environment they have chosen to live in. Take a slow breath and let your jaw unclench as you imagine the quiet strength of those massive trees standing tall against the open sky. There is nothing you need to solve right now, so just let your thoughts rest on the solid, heavy wooden trunks that hold them perfectly in place. We feel the reliability of this order, a natural architecture that is built to last for hundreds of years without ever shifting or failing. Just below these towering giants sits the canopy, which is the main roof of the forest. This layer is a thick, continuous sea of green leaves and twisting branches that covers almost the entire jungle like a massive, living umbrella. Evidence suggests that the canopy is so dense, it actually blocks out more than 90% of the sunlight from ever reaching the ground. The canopy acts as the primary solar panel for the entire forest, capturing the bright light of the day and turning it into the energy that feeds the woods. Because there is so much light and food available here, the vast majority of the animals and insects choose to live their entire lives in this specific layer. It is a quiet, mechanical process of survival, where the highest branches provide a safe and wealthy neighborhood far away from the dark soil. Another quiet detail is how the canopy handles the heavy rain that falls almost every day in the tropics. Instead of letting the water crash directly onto the ground, the millions of leaves catch the rain, breaking its fast and heavy fall. The water then slowly drips down from one leaf to the next, turning a violent storm into a gentle and steady shower by the time it reaches the earth. Let the day fade a little more as you picture this slow, downward journey of the rain through the endless layers of green. You are safe and secure in your room, while the forest handles the weather outside with a calm and flawless efficiency. And this connects back to the idea of a protective shield, a natural roof that keeps the world below safe, dark, and perfectly balanced. Below the thick roof of the canopy, we find the understory, a quiet and dim place where the light is very scarce. The trees in this layer are usually much younger, or simply belong to smaller species that do not need to reach the open sky to survive. Because the sun is mostly blocked, the plants here have developed a different strategy to gather the tiny beams of light that manage to filter through. We can tell because the leaves on these lower trees are often massive, growing much wider and flatter than the leaves at the top of the forest. This large surface area acts like a wide net, designed to catch every single drop of sunlight that escapes the heavy canopy above. It is another way of seeing the same idea of patience, as these broad leaves wait quietly in the shadows for their brief moment of energy. Many of the young trees in the understory will stay at this height for decades, resting in a state of suspended growth. They simply wait for an older, larger tree to finally fall and create a sudden opening in the roof of the forest. When that rare burst of light finally hits the ground, the young tree will use all its stored energy to quickly grow tall and fill the empty space. For a moment, let that idea rest as you consider the extreme patience required to simply wait for 20 or 30 years in the dark. It is a biological timeline that is completely different from our own, moving at a pace so slow that it is invisible to the human eye. We are witnessing a world that does not rush, where standing still is not a failure, but a highly successful way of living. As we look at the trunks of the trees holding up this massive structure, we notice that the bark is completely different from the rough trees found in colder climates. The bark of a rainforest tree is usually very smooth and thin, offering almost no grip for anything trying to climb it. One reason for this is to prevent heavy vines and other plants from attaching themselves too easily and stealing the tree's precious light. Because there is no freezing winter in this environment, the trees do not need a thick, heavy coat of bark to protect their inner wood from the cold. Instead, they focus their energy entirely on growing taller and keeping their surfaces clean of the aggressive mosses and climbing roots. It is a masterpiece of efficiency, ensuring that every part of the tree is designed strictly for its survival in a hot and humid world. Take another slow breath and feel the solid comfort of the mattress beneath you as we finally reach the very bottom of this vertical city. The forest floor is the darkest and quietest layer of all, an open space where very few green plants can actually survive the lack of sun. It is a clear and surprisingly empty landscape, covered only by a thin, dark blanket of fallen leaves and old, decaying wood. Scientists noticed this when they first explored the deep woods, expecting a tangled mess of bushes, but finding an open, shadowy floor instead. Without the sunlight to power new growth, the bottom of the forest becomes a dedicated zone of recycling, managed entirely by fungi and tiny insects. They work tirelessly in the dark, breaking down the heavy organic matter and turning it back into the pure nutrients that the giant roots so desperately need. If we return to that simple picture, we see a perfect, closed loop of life, death, and immediate rebirth. The towering giants drop their old leaves to the ground, and the ground slowly digests them to feed the towering giants once again. We feel the reliability of this order, a continuous and quiet engine that powers the largest biological structure on the face of the Earth. There is nothing you need to solve right now, so just let your mind rest in the calm, dark space between the massive wooden trunks. The vertical architecture of the forest is holding steady, providing a safe and organized home for millions of quiet creatures. We are ready now to look closer at the invisible forces that move through this space, exploring how the Earth breathes and circulates its endless supply of water. Stepping away from the visible layers of the branches, we can also explore the invisible movement of the air that surrounds the trees. The forest is not just a static structure made of wood and leaves, but a highly active engine that continuously pumps water and gas through its massive system. One clue is that you can actually feel this physical process happening when you stand on the dark forest floor, wrapped in the heavy and humid air. The moisture you feel on your skin is the direct result of millions of plants slowly exhaling pure water vapor into the quiet shadows around you. For many years, it was difficult to understand exactly how much water the jungle was moving every single day. Scientists noticed the true scale of this process when they built tall metal observation towers that reach far above the canopy, placing sensitive electronic sensors directly into the wind. In practice, These quiet sensors measure the exact amount of moisture and oxygen leaving the leaves, revealing numbers that are almost too large to imagine. Evidence suggests that a single massive rainforest tree can lift hundreds of gallons of water from the deep soil and release it into the sky in just one single day. Take a slow breath and let the day fade a little more as you picture this invisible upward flow of water. There is nothing you need to solve right now, so just let your thoughts follow that steady journey from the dark roots all the way up to the bright sun. This biological pumping system is known as transpiration, a quiet mechanical process that requires absolutely no moving parts to work perfectly. Deep underground, the thick roots draw in the cold moisture, pulling it up through the solid wooden trunk using only the natural pressure of the living plant. When the water finally reaches the highest leaves in the canopy, it is gently released into the warm air through microscopic holes on the underside of the green surface. It is a masterpiece of biology, a silent and continuous cycle that cools the entire forest down and prevents the delicate leaves from burning in the heat. And this connects back to the idea of a giant, breathing organism that cares for itself and the world around it. By sweating out this massive amount of water, the forest naturally creates its own thick clouds, which eventually gather together and fall right back down as heavy rain. If we return to that simple picture, we see a completely self-sustaining world that waters its own gardens and washes its own leaves without any outside help. The trees are essentially making their own weather, turning the bright solar energy into a slow and steady rainfall that keeps the dark earth soft and rich. Let your jaw unclench and feel the heavy comfort of your mattress as you think about the quiet power of this endless cycle. You are resting safely in your room while the ancient trees continue their slow and steady breathing, working through the night to keep their world perfectly balanced. We feel the reliability of this order, knowing that this massive green engine has been running flawlessly since the time of the dinosaurs. We are ready now to follow the water as it gathers in the sky above the canopy, exploring the incredible journey of the flying rivers that cross the continents. High above the continuous green roof, the atmosphere begins to change as heavy clouds gather in the warm tropical sky. The bright, direct sunlight is slowly replaced by a soft and heavy grey blanket, preparing to return all the gathered moisture back to the waiting trees below. Take a slow breath and let the day fade a little more as you picture the quiet arrival of the afternoon rain. There is nothing you need to solve right now, so just let your mind rest in the calm anticipation of the falling water. When the first drops begin to fall, they do not crash violently against the solid ground of the forest floor as they do in the open fields. Instead, they are caught by the billions of broad leaves in the canopy, acting like tiny, soft trampolines that absorb the heavy impact of the storm. Another quiet detail is how the water then begins a slow and highly organized journey down through the vertical layers of the woods. A single drop might slide from a high sunlit leaf, roll gently down a twisting vine, and rest quietly on a lower branch before continuing its long descent. Evidence suggests that it can sometimes take 10 full minutes for a single drop of rain to finally reach the dark soil below the trees. This incredibly slow trickle ensures that the earth is never washed away, but rather soaked perfectly and evenly like a massive, gentle sponge. If we return to that simple picture, we see a protective system specifically designed to calm the chaotic forces of the weather outside. The violent storm is tamed by the architecture of the trees, turned into a soothing, rhythmic dripping that echoes softly through the shadowy halls of the jungle. Along the way down, the traveling water encounters many unique plants that live their entire lives attached to the high branches, never touching the earth. These plants, known as epiphytes, have special leaves shaped like natural bowls, designed perfectly to catch the slowly falling rain and store it for the drier days. In practice, these tiny pools of water high up in the trees become quiet, little resting places for the creatures that live entirely in the canopy. It is a quiet, mechanical process of distribution, making sure that every single layer of the forest gets exactly the right amount of moisture to survive. Let your jaw unclench and feel the solid comfort of your mattress as you listen to the steady, imagined rhythm of the falling rain. You are safe and secure inside your room, entirely protected from the weather, just as the lower forest is protected by its heavy green roof. When the water eventually touches the ground, it is instantly absorbed by the thick layer of fallen leaves and the soft velvet moss. The soil of the rainforest is incredibly porous, meaning it drinks the rain immediately, leaving very few puddles on the surface to disturb the quiet dark. Underneath the soft earth, the massive, spreading roots of the giant trees are waiting patiently to collect this fresh supply of moisture. They draw the water into their wooden structures with a quiet, powerful pull, acting as the starting point for the water's long journey back up to the sky. Now imagine the water traveling up the inside of the tree trunk, moving in complete silence through thousands of microscopic wooden tubes. It is a highly efficient natural system that defies gravity, carrying heavy liquid straight up into the air without making a single sound or requiring any conscious effort. Scientists noticed this continuous cycle when they realized that the forest actually creates the very rain that it relies on to survive the hot seasons. Once the water reaches the highest leaves again, it is gently released back into the air as a fine, invisible mist, cooling the canopy as it escapes. And this connects back to the idea of the forest acting as a giant, breathing organism that constantly regulates its own local environment. The trees breathe out the moisture forms into heavy, low-hanging clouds, and the clouds eventually burst to gently water the forest all over again. There is nothing you need to solve right now, because the natural world is managing this massive, complex cycle with an effortless and perfect grace. Just let your thoughts drift along with the rising vapor, floating up away from the dark earth and slowly toward the open grey sky. As millions of trees release this invisible mist at the exact same time, the moisture gathers together to form something truly spectacular far above the canopy. It creates massive, slow-moving currents of water vapor that flow through the upper atmosphere, famously known by researchers as flying rivers. These flying rivers are actually larger and carry much more water than the greatest physical rivers flowing on the solid ground below. They move smoothly and silently across the continents, pushed by the gentle, steady winds of the tropics, carrying life-giving moisture to faraway lands. We can tell because when these atmospheric rivers eventually meet the cold air of distant mountains, they release their heavy water as rain or fresh snow. This means that the gentle breathing of the rainforest directly waters the crops, and fills the deep lakes of environments thousands of miles away from the equator. It is another way of seeing the same idea of a deeply connected planet, where the health of one green space supports the life of the entire globe. The forest is a generous engine, keeping enough water to sustain its own roots while freely sending the rest out to nourish the wider world. Take a slow breath and let the vast scale of this airborne journey bring a sense of deep and lasting peace to your mind. The water is always moving, always flowing from the earth to the sky and back again, following an ancient rhythm that never falters and never rushes. For a moment, let that idea rest as you feel the calming reliability of this continuous global movement of water above your head. We feel the safety of this order, a quiet cycle of falling, rising, and flowing that sustains all life on the planet with perfect predictability. We are ready now to turn our attention back to the solid ground, to explore the incredible patience of the plants that wait quietly in the shadows. Returning to the solid ground from the flying rivers above, we can focus our attention on the incredible patience of the plants that make up this massive green world. For human beings, time is often measured in fast minutes and busy hours, but the forest measures its life in decades and centuries. One clue is that the ancient trees do not rush their growth, but instead follow a very slow and deliberate pace that guarantees their long survival in the dark. Take a slow breath and let your jaw unclench as you think about the quiet passing of 100 years in the deep woods. There is nothing you need to solve right now, because the forest has already mastered the art of waiting without any frustration or fear. We feel the safety of this order, knowing that the massive wooden trunks around us have weathered countless storms simply by standing perfectly still. Scientists noticed this extreme patience when they studied the giant root systems that anchor the tallest trees to the soft, wet earth. Because the soil in the rainforest is actually quite thin and poor in nutrients, the trees cannot send their roots deep down into the ground. Instead, they grow massive, flat support roots that snake outward across the forest floor, spreading like giant, gentle fingers to catch whatever food they can find. In practice, these wide roots provide the perfect foundation to hold up a tree that weighs as much as several large buildings. It is a quiet, mechanical process of balance, spreading the massive weight over a large area so the tree never sinks or falls in the heavy rain. And this connects back to the idea of a highly organized structure, where the bottom layer perfectly supports the towering heights of the canopy above. Another quiet detail is the invisible network of life that connects all of these different roots together just beneath the fallen leaves. The trees rely on a vast and hidden web of fungi, which acts like a microscopic highway for sharing water and vital nutrients. Evidence suggests that if one tree is standing in the dark and needs more energy, the surrounding trees will literally pump their own food through this web to help it survive. Let the day fade a little more as you picture this beautiful, silent community working together in the dark earth. You are safe and secure in your own bed, while the trees are safely held in the protective embrace of their giant, connected family. It is another way of seeing the same idea of a shared existence, where no single plant stands entirely alone in the vastness of the green world. Looking back up into the branches, we can see other plants that have found a completely different way to survive without ever touching the soil. These are the epiphytes, beautiful ferns and orchids that spend their entire lives resting gently on the high branches of the older trees. Because they do not have access to the ground, they simply pull the moisture they need directly from the heavy, humid air that surrounds them. We can tell because their roots do not grow downward, but instead wrap securely around the bark or hang freely into the empty space. To get their food, they catch falling dust, dead leaves, and tiny insects, slowly building their own miniature patches of soil high up in the canopy. It is a masterpiece of biology, proving that life will always find a quiet and creative way to thrive, even without the traditional foundation of the earth. There is nothing you need to solve right now, so just let your thoughts drift with the slow and steady growth of these airborne gardens. Every single leaf and vine is moving at a pace that is completely invisible to our eyes, unfolding with a calm and perfect grace. If we return to that simple picture, we see a forest that is actually in a constant state of motion, even though it appears to be entirely still. One of the most dramatic examples of this slow motion is the journey of the strangler fig, a plant that begins its life as a tiny seed dropped high in the canopy. Instead of growing up from the dirt, it slowly sends long, thin roots all the way down the trunk of its host tree until it finally reaches the ground. Scientists noticed that this journey can take many decades to complete, a slow and silent embrace that perfectly illustrates the unbelievable patience of the woods. In practice, the long roots eventually thicken and merge together, forming a beautiful, hollow wooden cage around the original tree. It is a completely natural and necessary part of the cycle, creating new spaces and complex structures that provide shelter for countless other creatures. We feel the reliability of this order, a biological timeline where actions take 50 years to unfold, bringing a deep sense of calm to our own rushing minds. Take another slow breath and feel the solid comfort of the mattress beneath you as you imagine the quiet life of the young saplings on the forest floor. As we saw before, these tiny trees can remain in a state of suspended animation for an incredibly long time, waiting for a gap in the green roof above. They do not grow frustrated or tired of the darkness. They simply exist in a state of deep and peaceful rest, perfectly content to wait for their turn in the sun. When the light finally does arrive, the young tree wakes up from its long slumber and begins to stretch upward with a new and quiet energy. It is a real-world connection to the importance of rest, showing us that waiting and gathering our strength is often the most vital part of the journey. The forest teaches us that there is no need to force our way forward when the natural rhythm of the world will eventually provide exactly what we need. Another quiet detail is how the passing of time is recorded inside the very wood of the trees themselves. In places with cold winters, trees grow light and dark rings every year, but in the constant warmth of the rainforest, the growth is smooth and unbroken. Scientists noticed this when they studied the inner layers of the ancient trunks, finding a beautiful, solid wood that reflects a life of endless, uninterrupted summer. Let your jaw unclench and allow the heavy darkness of your room to wrap around you like the thick bark of those old and silent giants. You are insulated from the noise and the cold, held safely in a space that has been prepared specifically for your rest. The patience of the trees is a comforting weight, a reminder that the world will continue to turn steadily whether we are awake to watch it or not. Evidence suggests that some of the oldest root systems in the forest have been slowly creeping through the soil for thousands of years. They have survived massive changes in the world outside, simply by remaining flexible and deeply connected to the earth that supports them. It is a masterpiece of endurance, proving that true strength often comes from staying grounded and moving at a slow, deliberate pace. If we return to that simple picture, we see a green kingdom built entirely on the foundation of time and cooperation. The giant roots share their water, the epiphytes build their own soil, and the young saplings wait for decades without a single complaint. We feel the deep peace of this interconnected community, ready to leave the silent wood behind and focus our minds entirely on the gentle sounds that drift through the warm air. As the slow and steady growth of the jungle continues all around us, we can begin to tune in to the soft acoustic world that fills the empty spaces between the trunks. The forest is never truly silent, but rather hums with a continuous and soothing vibration that acts like a natural lullaby. We are ready now to explore the symphony of the canopy, listening to how sound travels safely through the dense and heavy leaves. Leaving the quiet patience of the roots and vines behind, we begin to notice the invisible waves of sound that constantly wash through the warm air. In a world where the thick leaves make it very difficult to see far ahead, the animals and insects rely on their voices to reach out into the dark. One clue is that the rainforest has its own unique acoustic signature, a steady and calming background noise that never completely stops. Take a slow breath and let the day fade a little more as you imagine resting your eyes and simply listening to the green space. There is nothing you need to solve right now, so just let your mind float on the steady, rhythmic hum that echoes gently through the trees. We feel the safety of this order, knowing that this natural white noise is designed to soothe the nervous system and protect the peace of the woods. The structure of the forest plays a massive role in how these sounds travel from one ancient trunk to another. Because the canopy is so thick and the bark of the trees is often covered in soft moss, sharp and sudden noises are quickly absorbed and quieted down. Scientists noticed this when they measured how far different frequencies could travel before they were completely swallowed by the heavy, damp air. In practice, this means the jungle acts like a giant, natural recording studio, perfectly padded to prevent loud echoes from disturbing the sleeping creatures. The high, sharp calls of alarm do not travel very far, which keeps the overall atmosphere of the forest deeply calm and relaxed. And this connects back to the idea of a protective shield, where the physical architecture of the trees actually filters out the noise and stress of the outside world. Another quiet detail is the constant low vibration created by millions of tiny insects resting hidden in the leaves. Cicadas and crickets produce a steady, droning song that blends together into a single, continuous wave of sound. Evidence suggests that this low hum works exactly like the white noise we use in our own rooms to block out sudden disruptions and help us sleep. Let your jaw unclench and feel the solid comfort of your mattress as you tune into this ancient biological lullaby is less than Hasson. 4 is greater than. You are safe and secure, held by the same calming frequencies that have gently rocked the inhabitants of the forest to sleep for millions of years. It is another way of seeing the same idea of balance, where thousands of different voices combine to create one single peaceful breath. High up in the canopy, where the sound can travel a bit more freely above the dense understory, the birds and monkeys add their own slow melodies to the mix. They use specific, long-carrying tones that weave smoothly through the branches without losing their clear shape. We can tell because observing researchers found that these canopy singers naturally adjust the pitch of their voices to match the density of the leaves around them. It is a quiet, mechanical process of communication, perfectly tuned to the environment so that no energy is ever wasted in the dark. Families of monkeys use soft, low calls to keep track of each other as they slowly navigate the high, wooden pathways of the canopy. If we return to that simple picture, we see a community that stays connected through sound, an invisible thread that ties every member safely together. The frogs sitting near the slow-moving streams also join this evening song, inflating their small throats to produce deep, rich notes. These low vibrations are perfectly designed to echo along the muddy banks, cutting through the dense fog that rolls across the water in the late afternoon. Scientists noticed that each species of frog chooses a slightly different time and a different pitch, ensuring that their voices never clash or compete with one another. In practice, this means the acoustic space is divided up just as carefully as the physical branches of the trees. It is a masterpiece of biological cooperation, where every single voice is given the room it needs to be heard without disturbing the peace of the whole. And this connects back to the idea of perfect balance, showing how nature organizes itself into a quiet and respectful community. Even the weather contributes to this massive symphony, adding the soft rustle of the wind and the steady drip of the falling rain. When the wind blows across the very top of the emergent trees, it sounds like a distant, rolling ocean, far removed from the quiet stillness of the forest floor. This gentle rustling provides a deep, heavy background note that anchors all the other delicate sounds of the jungle. There is nothing you need to solve right now, because the natural world is managing this complex orchestra with effortless grace. Just let your thoughts drift along with the falling water drops, matching the slow and predictable rhythm of the damp earth. We are witnessing a space where every creature knows exactly when to sing and when to remain quiet, creating a flawless harmony in the dark. For a moment, let that idea rest as you consider how this constant soundscape actually helps the animals to rest more deeply. Instead of requiring total silence, the creatures of the rainforest rely on this familiar hum to know that their environment is safe and unchanged. When the steady noise is present, it means the predators are away, the weather is calm, and it is perfectly safe to close their eyes and power down. Take a slow breath and allow the heavy darkness of your room to become filled with the imagined, comforting drone of the tropical night. The symphony of the canopy is a blanket of sound, weaving the countless lives of the forest into a single, unified expression of peace. We feel the reliability of this order, knowing that this song has been playing continuously since the beginning of time. As the day slowly turns toward the evening, the pitch and the players of this grand orchestra will gently begin to shift. We are ready now to look down from the noisy musical canopy, turning our focus to the quiet micro-world of the soil where the true recycling work of the forest takes place. Leaving the bright and musical upper branches far above, we slowly drift down to the absolute quiet of the forest floor. Down here, the thick roof of the canopy has blocked out almost all of the sun, creating a space that lives in a permanent, soothing state of twilight. One clue is that without the bright light, there is very little wind or sudden movement, leaving the air completely still and heavy with moisture. Take a slow breath and let the day fade a little more as you picture this dark and deeply protected environment. There is nothing you need to solve right now, because the earth beneath your feet has been managing its own quiet affairs for millions of years. We feel the safety of this order, a cool and shadow-filled sanctuary that rests patiently beneath the towering wooden giants. As we look closely at the ground, we can see that it is covered entirely by a thick, soft blanket of fallen leaves, broken twigs, and old seed pods. This layer is constantly being added to as the millions of trees above shed their old parts to make room for fresh growth. In practice, this creates a continuous, gentle rain of organic material that drifts silently down through the dark air to rest on the soil. Scientists noticed that if nothing ever cleaned up this falling debris, the forest floor would quickly become buried under mountains of dead leaves. But the jungle has a perfect solution, relying on an invisible army of tiny workers to break down the heavy blanket. It is a quiet mechanical process of recycling, where millions of fungi and tiny insects work around the clock in the absolute dark. Another quiet detail is how quickly these tiny organisms can make a thick, tough leaf completely disappear back into the earth. Because the air is so hot and humid, the process of decay happens at an incredibly fast and efficient pace. Evidence suggests that a leaf that takes a whole year to break down in a cold climate might dissolve into pure soil in just a few short weeks here. Let your jaw unclench and feel the solid comfort of your mattress as you think about this endless, reliable cleanup. You are safe and secure in your room, while the forest floor acts like a giant natural stomach, quietly digesting the past to feed the future. It is another way of seeing the same idea of a closed loop, where absolutely nothing is ever wasted or thrown away. The most important workers in this dark micro-world are the fungi, appearing as delicate, beautiful mushrooms that sprout suddenly from the damp wood. They do not need any sunlight to grow, pulling all their energy directly from the decaying leaves and the soft, wet bark. We can tell because they often bloom in the deepest shadows, adding flashes of pale white, soft yellow, and deep orange to the dark green landscape. And this connects back to the giant root systems that snake across the surface of the ground just beneath our feet. The roots cannot absorb the dead leaves on their own. They desperately need the fungi to break the material down into liquid nutrients first. If we return to that simple picture, we see a perfect partnership, where the tiny mushrooms feed the massive trees, and the trees provide the shade the mushrooms need to survive. There is nothing you need to solve right now, so just let your thoughts drift along the vast, invisible web of fine, white threads that the fungi weave underground. This microscopic network is called mycelium, and it connects almost every single plant and tree in the entire forest together. It is a masterpiece of biology, a living, breathing internet of the soil that allows the forest to share its wealth and communicate in the dark. Scientists noticed this connection when they tracked how trees sitting in bright sunlight would send extra sugar down into their roots. The fungal web would pick up that extra sugar and carry it through the dark soil to a younger tree that was struggling in the deep shade. It is a real-world connection that proves the forest is not a collection of individuals, but a single, deeply caring family that supports its weakest members. Take a slow breath and allow the heavy darkness of your room to wrap around you, much like the comforting darkness of the jungle floor. The air here smells deeply of rich earth and fresh rain, a grounding and ancient scent that signals pure life and continuous renewal. We feel the reliability of this order, knowing that beneath the surface, a million quiet acts of sharing and healing are happening every single second. Now imagine a massive, ancient tree that has finally reached the end of its incredibly long life, slowly leaning until it gently falls to the earth. When it lands, it does not mark an end, but rather the beginning of a massive feast for the micro-world of the soil. The fallen trunk quickly becomes a busy, quiet neighborhood, covered in soft green moss and serving as a safe home for countless tiny creatures. Over the passing decades, the fungi and the insects will slowly chew through the heavy wood, turning the solid giant back into soft, rich dirt. One clue is that a tree that took 500 years to grow might take another 100 years to completely dissolve into the forest floor. This slow breakdown releases a massive amount of stored energy back into the ecosystem, perfectly timed to feed the next generation of waiting seeds. Another quiet detail is that some of these incredible fungi have developed the ability to create their own soft light in the pitch black of the night. Known as bioluminescence, this gentle, glowing chemistry makes the mushrooms look like tiny, pale green stars resting directly on the ground. Evidence suggests they glow to attract tiny night insects, who come to investigate the light and help spread the fungal spores across the forest. Let the day fade a little more as you picture these tiny, glowing lights scattered across the dark and silent earth. It is a beautiful and calming sight, a natural nightlight built directly into the floor of the woods to guide the smallest travelers. You are perfectly safe in your own quiet space, watching this slow, glowing magic unfold in the deep imagination of your mind. If we return to that simple picture, we see that the soil of the rainforest is the true foundation of everything we have explored so far. Without this dark, busy layer of recycling, the flying rivers would dry up, the canopy would thin, and the symphony of the branches would slowly fade away. It is a highly efficient mechanical process that guarantees the survival of the green world, turning death instantly back into vibrant, waking life. Hidden within this rich, recycled earth are millions of tiny seeds dropped by the canopy trees and buried safely in the dark. They form a massive, living bank of potential, resting in a deep sleep while they wait patiently for a gap to open in the roof above. Some of these seeds can sleep in the damp soil for many years without ever losing their ability to sprout when the time is exactly right. Take another slow breath and feel the heavy comfort of knowing that nature never rushes its most important work. The tiny seeds and the quiet fungi do not worry about the passing of time because they are perfectly synchronized with the slow, turning rhythm of the earth. We are witnessing a space of ultimate patience, where the dark soil is not an empty place, but a crowded, sleeping nursery. As the last hints of the afternoon sun completely disappear from the upper canopy, the temperature of the forest floor begins to drop very slightly. The long day of the jungle is finally coming to a close, and the complex micro-world of the soil prepares for a new shift of nocturnal workers. We are ready now to follow the fading light into the true dark, exploring the silent mysteries and the calm transitions of the deep, tropical night. As the deep shadows of the late afternoon stretch across the forest floor, the last remaining beams of sunlight finally disappear from the canopy above. The bright emerald greens of the leaves slowly fade into a heavy, comforting black, covering the entire jungle in a thick blanket of darkness. With the departure of the sun, the temperature in the air begins to drop very gently, bringing a cool and refreshing relief to the massive trees. One clue is that this slight chill causes the heavy moisture in the air to condense, forming a soft, invisible mist that rests quietly over the branches. Take a slow breath and let your jaw unclench as you welcome the arrival of the deep tropical night. There is nothing you need to solve right now, because the forest is naturally guiding itself into a state of profound and peaceful rest. In practice, the transition from day to night is not a sudden or chaotic event, but a very slow and organized change of shifts. The brightly colored birds and the busy monkeys find safe, hidden spots high up in the wooden architecture to close their eyes and power down. As the daytime creatures settle into their sleep, a completely different community of animals slowly begins to wake up in the dark. Scientists noticed that these nocturnal animals move with extreme care and incredible slowness, perfectly designed to navigate the heavy silence without waking their sleeping neighbors. And this connects back to the idea of a highly organized schedule, where the limited space of the forest is shared perfectly across the hours of the day. By dividing the environment between the light and the dark, the jungle ensures that no energy is ever wasted and no path is ever too crowded. Let the day fade a little more as you picture the quiet emergence of these night travelers moving like slow shadows among the massive trunks. You are safe and secure in your own bed, completely removed from the wild, while the gentle creatures of the dark take over the watch. High above the thick roof of the canopy, the bright, silver light of the moon begins to filter down through the tiny gaps in the leaves. Evidence suggests that this pale moonlight is enough to guide the nocturnal hunters, who have developed massive, sensitive eyes to catch even the smallest reflection in the pitch black. For a moment, let that idea rest as you consider the absolute quiet required to move successfully in a world with almost no light. The nighttime inhabitants do not rely on speed or loud calls, but instead use patience and a flawless sense of touch to find their way along the twisting vines. Another quiet detail is how the plants themselves respond to the arrival of the night, changing their behaviors to match the new, cooler atmosphere. Some flowers that remained tightly closed during the heat of the day now slowly open their soft petals, releasing deep and heavy scents into the still air. We can tell because these unique, night-blooming flowers are specifically designed to attract large, pale moths that wander silently through the dark. It is a quiet, mechanical process of attraction, relying entirely on the slow movement of the fragrant air rather than bright colors or visual signals. If we return to that simple picture, we see a completely different version of the forest, one that operates on chemistry and gentle vibrations rather than sight. The heavy moisture traps these sweet, earthy smells close to the ground, creating a rich and calming perfume that lingers softly until the dawn. Take another slow breath and feel the solid support of the mattress as you sink deeper into this fragrant nocturnal peace. There are no decisions to be made, no bright lights to hurt your eyes, and no sudden noises to pull you away from your rest. The acoustic symphony of the forest also changes its rhythm, replacing the high, sharp calls of the afternoon with a deeper, more rhythmic drone. The frogs sitting near the slow rivers adjust their tones, and the crickets settle into a long, continuous hum that sounds exactly like a steady heartbeat. It is another way of seeing the same idea of a natural lullaby, a heavy blanket of sound that covers the sleeping animals and keeps them perfectly safe. The steady noise acts as a biological signal that all is well in the dark, allowing the conscious mind to completely let go of its worries. Deep in the canopy, animals like the sloth barely move at all, hanging completely still for hours on end like furry, breathing extensions of the branches themselves. Their extreme slowness is a masterpiece of biology, making them completely invisible to anything passing by in the deep shadows of the night. We feel the reliability of this order, knowing that staying perfectly still is often the most successful way to survive and thrive. As the night reaches its deepest and darkest point, the entire jungle seems to enter a state of profound and unbreakable hibernation. We are ready now to widen our perspective one last time, looking beyond the boundaries of the dark trees. We will explore how the slow, breathing rhythm of this sleeping forest continues to regulate the health of the entire globe, even in the middle of the quiet night. As the nocturnal animals continue their quiet routines in the dark, we can step back and look at the vast and connected world they live in. The rainforest is not just an isolated patch of green, but a highly active living system that keeps the entire planet healthy and cool. One clue is that the sheer size of these ancient woods creates a massive, continuous shadow that protects the Earth from the intense heat of the sun. By keeping the ground completely dark and moist, the dense canopy prevents the tropical soil from drying out and turning into a harsh and empty desert. Take a slow breath and let the day fade a little more as you picture this massive green shield covering the middle of the globe. There is nothing you need to solve right now, so just let your mind appreciate the quiet protection provided by billions of broad and silent leaves. In practice, the trees act like giant biological air conditioners that constantly regulate the temperature of the heavy air around them. When they release their stored moisture into the sky, the simple process of evaporation actually pulls the heat away from the surface, cooling the entire region down. Scientists noticed this when they measured the temperature of the air flowing out of the deep woods and found it to be significantly cooler than the air over the open plains. And this connects back to the idea of a perfect global balance, because this cool air is eventually carried away by the wind to soothe other, warmer parts of the world. Let your jaw unclench and feel the reliable comfort of this quiet and steady global rhythm. You are safely resting in your room, supported by an invisible network of air and water that is constantly being refreshed by the regular habits of the jungle. Another quiet detail is how the massive wooden trunks of the trees serve as a vital storage system for the long-term health of our atmosphere. Throughout their incredibly long lives, the ancient trees pull heavy carbon out of the air and lock it safely away inside their solid, wooden frames. Evidence suggests that the tropical rainforests hold on to more of this carbon than almost any other natural system on the Earth. It is a masterpiece of biology, a quiet engine that actively cleans the sky and stores the waste deep in the dark, living wood where it can do no harm. If we return to that simple picture, we see that the deep breathing of the forest directly helps to maintain the very air that we breathe on the land. It is a real-world connection that ties the slow, peaceful growth of the ancient trees to the health and survival of everything else on the planet. For a moment, let that idea rest as you feel the vast and calming scale of this deeply interconnected system. We feel the reliability of this order, knowing that the giant heart of the green world will continue to beat long into the quiet hours of the night. The slow rivers that flow out of the jungle also carry a rich supply of recycled nutrients all the way down to the distant oceans. As the fresh water finally meets the salt water of the sea, it provides the perfect food for the tiny marine plants that live along the shallow coasts. It is another way of seeing the same idea of a continuous circle, where the rich, dark soil of the forest floor eventually nourishes the fish in the deep blue sea. The rainforest is a generous and open engine, keeping exactly what it needs to survive while freely sending the rest out to support the wider world. Take another slow breath and realize that there is nothing you need to solve right now while the Earth handles this massive, complex work. You are simply a passenger on this quiet journey, safely supported by a biological system that knows exactly how to maintain its own perfect balance. As the global rhythm continues its slow and steady pulse, we are ready to leave the wide world behind and focus entirely on the heavy silence of the dark woods. We are preparing for the final gateway, synchronizing our own breathing with the deep and resting silence of the ancient trees. Turning our attention away from the wide global climate, we focus entirely on the heavy silence that surrounds the ancient trees. The vast network of the outside world is slowly winding down, and the rainforest is safely tucked away in its own quiet corner of the dark. We can tell because the gentle rustling of the leaves has completely stopped, replaced by a steady and comforting stillness that fills the damp air. In practice, this is the time when the conscious mind of the forest hands over all its remaining control to the automatic systems of the night. The massive trunks stand with a slow and rhythmic certainty, knowing exactly how much strength is needed to sustain this profound level of rest. It is a masterpiece of biology, a quiet engine that runs without any instruction or worry from the busy, waking world. Take a slow breath and let the day fade a little more as you feel the heavy support of the mattress beneath you. There is nothing you need to solve right now because your biology has already taken over the complex work of keeping you safe and secure. You are simply floating on the steady current of your own breathing, moving deeper into the restorative stages of the night alongside the quiet jungle. A key detail is how the thick roots in the earth sink further into the soil, releasing any physical tension they carried from the long day of growing. The forest recognizes this midnight hour as a signal to completely power down, stopping all the active preparations for gathering sunlight or water. One reason for this is to conserve precious energy, allowing the deep repair of the plant cells to take priority over everything else in the dark. We feel the reliability of this order, knowing that gravity is holding the massive wooden giants gently but firmly in a place of total safety. The thick layer of the canopy provides a functional shield, trapping the warmth close to the ground while the outside air cools down to match the perfect sleeping temperature. If we return to that simple picture, we see a physical space that has been built for the sole purpose of recovery and absolute peace. In practice, the slowing down of the massive forest changes our perception of time, making the night feel like a vast and quiet, empty space. Minutes and hours blend together into a single, continuous experience of rest that stretches out toward the morning light without any interruption. We can tell because when the animals finally wake up, the long hours of the dark often seem to have passed in the blink of an eye. Now imagine the very center of the deepest jungle, a place where no human has ever walked or disturbed the quiet ground. The ancient trees here stand together like old friends, sharing the silence and the heavy moisture that rolls gently through the dark air. It is a sanctuary of pure biology, untouched and entirely self-sufficient, requiring absolutely nothing from the outside world to survive the night. Another quiet detail is the way the thick vines hang completely motionless, acting like heavy pendulums that have finally come to a complete stop. Without the heat of the sun to create rising air currents, the wind dies down to an absolute zero, leaving the forest in a state of perfect, glassy stillness. Scientists noticed this when they measured the complete lack of movement in the canopy during the deepest, quietest hours before the dawn. Let the day fade a little more as you picture this absolute lack of motion, a physical reflection of your own resting muscles. Your arms and legs are heavy and entirely relaxed, mirroring the still branches that hang quietly above the dark forest floor. We feel the safety of this shared stillness, a universal pause that unites everything living on the earth in a moment of deep recovery. Another quiet detail is how the rare, slow drip of a falling water drop becomes the only anchor left connecting the resting woods to the physical world. The water moves from a high leaf down to the moss with a gentle rhythm, mimicking the slow and rolling delta waves that are now sweeping through your own resting brain. Scientists noticed this when they observed how a calm physical environment directly signals the mind to maintain its deepest level of rest. Let your jaw unclench and allow the heavy darkness of the room to act as a soft wrap around your senses, just like the deep shadows wrap around the trees. There are no decisions to be made, no long distances to cross, and no far-off destinations to reach before the sun comes up. You are exactly where you need to be, participating in the same quiet ritual of restoration that has sustained this green world for countless generations. A key detail is how the temperature of your own room works in harmony with the natural cooling of your physical form. The contrast between the cool air on your face and the heavy warmth of the blankets creates a perfect environment for your nervous system to fully relax. It is another way of seeing the same idea of balance, where the outside world and the inside of the body meet in a state of total peace. As the hours stretch out ahead, the chemical messengers in the plants continue to manage their quiet, resting state with perfect, slow timing. They guide the massive trunks seamlessly through the heavy repairs of the wood and the slow processing of the dark soil. And this connects back to the idea of a nightly journey, a path that the biology of the forest knows by heart and follows without any hesitation or fear. One clue is that even if a sleeping monkey briefly notices a change in the wind, the heavy sleep pressure acts like a buffer to pull the animal gently back under. It is a comforting weight, a reminder that the night is long and that there is plenty of time left to finish the necessary healing in the dark. We rest in the knowledge that this system is solid, built to protect the peace of the giant woods through all the quiet hours of the night. Every single cell in the massive green body of the forest is now operating on its lowest and most efficient setting, using almost no energy to sustain itself in the cool air. This allows all the available resources to be directed toward the roots and the vital core, washing away the physical waste of the long day. Evidence suggests that the most vital maintenance of any complex biological machine can only happen when it is in this state of total surrender. The transition into the final gateway of sleep is a complete release into the ancient and unbreakable laws of biology and nature. The air is clean, the leaves are repaired, and the whole system is refreshed by the long periods of stillness and heavy silence. We are safe and secure, held in the perfect balance of an automatic cycle that never asks for anything in return from the resting world. Take a slow breath and let the heavy weight of your own body sink completely into the soft support beneath you. The air in the room is cool and fresh, moving through the quiet space with the same steady rhythm as the earth turning in the void. Your breathing is slow and natural, following the steady heartbeat of the planet as it travels through the silent night. The quiet journey of the rainforest is complete, and the natural mechanics of the dark earth are the only things left to watch over its rest. The massive wooden frames are perfectly still, suspended in the cool, damp air, waiting patiently for the distant light of the morning. You are sharing this exact same peace, wrapped safely in the calm and steady silence of your own room. If you are still awake, you can subscribe to Sleepy Night channel for more calm night journeys like this. That was 100 calm facts about rainforests. Now the sound will continue for a while, so you can fall asleep. Good night.